to start things off with a little bit of the mainstream before we get into the community-driven news that you guys are accustomed to. So we're going to start things off the right way by addressing a few key things. And you may wonder, I don't know, Max, you brought some info yesterday, and then today was buy the rumor, sell the bull crap. Okay, so I'm going to unfollow you, Max, because you're full of it. Well, check this out. So let's start things off with this. And it comes straight from the one and only CoinDesk, right? So we reference them quite a bit. I don't think anybody objects to us referencing CoinDesk. I mean, they got some good knowledge. But as we get into this, you will see a few key things. And it says Fed dramatically speeds up U.S. payments with Fednow, but downplays any tie to CBDCs. And they've been pretty consistent about that, have they not, Rue?
Oh, yes, they have.
Yeah, absolutely. So some argue it would weaken crypto's payments use case or form a bridge to a digital dollar. So it's kind of mixed. It's kind of like I guess you could say like the last Fast and Furious movies. Like it's kind of mixed. It doesn't sound great, right? So
it's all right.
I don't know if anybody saw it. It was just kind of mixed. Anyway, so I'm just being real, right? So I'm going to play this first. And if anything, I'm going to pause it in a key area. Try to pay attention to this part. Yes, it's the teacher side of me coming out, but I got to do it, guys, because this is a follow-up based on yesterday. And we will make our own conclusion if it was buy the rumor, sell the news. But hear me out on this. This comes from CoinDesk. Let's jump into it. Please smash that like. Here we go.
Big news out of the Federal Reserve right now. Fednow is now live. The 24/7 banking system that connects banks to banks and allows for instantaneous payment settlement across the United States is now live. This is not Venmo, but it is instantaneous payments between bank accounts. So if you want to send an invoice to a bank or a business, you can do this through Fednow, through your banking partner, and have that money in your checking account or your partner's checking account within seconds. This is a huge update to the Federal Reserve System. It's boring background infrastructure that actually matters quite a bit and has a great crypto angle because this is what stablecoins are supposed to do.
Who called this yesterday? Moi. Yes, I did do the whole outline of saying basically it's not necessarily Stellar XLM, but it's Stellar's USDC. Now, basically, we understand that key partnership with Circle. But you got to keep in mind, a while back, a few years ago, it was literally branded as Stellar USDC. There's a little bit more to that, but I just wanted to pause it there just in case anybody forgot about what we talked about yesterday. So there's a lot more. Please smash that like. Let's get more into this.
Right? So now we have a competitor on the central bank level with what crypto is building in the private sphere. Zach, saw your hand go up. What's your take on this?
What if this is the true legacy of crypto, guys? What if the established system co-opting a lot of these advancements is the true legacy of crypto? Think about it, guys. Think about it. I pose that question to you. This could be the world in which we live, right? Crypto, instant settlement, makes the Fed do stuff that is actually more efficient for the U.S. economy. Maybe that's ultimately what crypto was sent to do, rather than unseat and disrupt the incumbent system. That would be a pretty crazy plot twist. But I think, as we were talking about in the previous segment, I think an alternate universe will continue to persist for the foreseeable future, right? The existing system ain't going anywhere, whether it's big studios in Hollywood or whether it's Jerome Powell in the Fed. But that doesn't mean that another path can't also exist. And that path is privately issued cryptocurrencies in the form of Bitcoin, Ether, and others, right? So yeah, I think obviously there's a little bit of co-option happening here among the Fed, thinking about their views on what fintech can mean here in the 21st century and how it can make the banking system overall more efficient in the wake of a lot of these banking crises. But it certainly is a shot across the bow, I think, to a lot of people working in the crypto space who said maybe we could unseat and replace some of these legacy systems. Seems as though maybe the legacy systems will catch up with some of the advancements first set forth by crypto advocates. And I think that's maybe the big meta story here. But hey, I don't know. Jen, what do you think?
Zach, those were exactly my thoughts. The article mentioned officials like Powell who have said that this is going to help avoid the need for private sector alternatives. But I think that, the private sector has pushed the Fed to innovate, to solve some of the sticking points that have existed for a really long time. And the private sector will continue to exist, will continue to grow as the Fed continues to solve problems. And so I think everything can coexist, and there are options out there, and that is that.
CBDC. I'm so sad Wendy's not here today. She would be.
Yeah,
All
she
right.
would take
that part where the chant CBDC is not good. But anyway, so anyway, we're gonna jump back to this. Rue, what do you think about what was basically mentioned there? I know you have a little bit of an outline for, obviously, your take on what's going on with Stellar lately.
Well, you know what? The whole thing for me is a little puzzling when you kind of look in the background and think about like who's connected to the Fed, right? As far as like BlackRock and whatnot, right? Those same type of people have connections to things like Ripple. So like, why would you need a Fednow type deal around, right? And the whole thought of it, which they didn't mention, was that the whole start of it was to connect to institutions, right? So as far as like people are concerned, retail people are concerned, okay, then that means no CBDC for me, but that's usually how laws kind of start. They creep and they creep and they creep and they creep until, they get what they want, right? So I'm a little confused why Fednow needs to be there. But based on what I'm going to talk about later, maybe it's just going to connect to everything that's private anyway.
Yeah, some good points. I mean, the way I'm starting to look at this is kind of like how a lot of us went about, March 20th. And like I mentioned, yesterday, why is everything on the 20th? It's just like people smoke weed on the 20th, 420, or, today you have, for instance, July 20th, ISO 222, March 20th. Anyway, what I want to state is this, right? So before the big countdown for March 20th with ISO 222, there was so much anticipation. And then a lot of people, came away from it and said, even the people who are like XRP holders, XLM, XDC, anything tied to ISO 222. I mean, heck, even HBAR is ISO 222 compliant and so on. And basically, they kind of had the attitude like, well, this is kind of like a nothing burger because this is just a messaging system. But what we do know that when it comes to utility, it's like you need to see things be fully implemented. And then after that, you need to utilize what has been implemented. Otherwise, what's the whole purpose of that utility? I mean, like I mentioned before, even with like Jasmine and so on, the analogy I mentioned yesterday, like they shipped out, 20,000 blockchain PCs, I think, done through Avita. And that's a great step forward, right? But, the analogy I made was, okay, what if it was here in the United States and you had like, I don't know, a few Best Buy locations? As you know, we still have Best Buy out here in the Phoenix area, right? So they order that inventory, right? Just because you order the inventory and it's stocked, right, in your inventory, and some call center, for instance, decides to order them all up from Best Buy for whatever reason, does that mean that those PCs are plugged in to the World Wide Web and they're being used and customers are using it and utilizing the personal data locker? No. So is that utility being used? No. March 20th, ISO 222 went live. We saw a few banks who implemented it, but by November of 2025, that's when we should get full implementation. And then even after full implementation, doesn't necessarily mean that all the banks are going to be like all using it all at once. I think this is another case with Fednow, from what I've gathered, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit more in regards to this, where it's not necessarily buy the rumor, sell the news, but it's a perfect case of, okay, this has been implemented. It's live. Who is utilizing it right now? And that's what we're going to jump into right now. So I'm going to show you guys this again. And basically it comes from this place, which is CoinDesk. Let me hit the escape before you can scroll down. there's some takeaways obviously from this, but here is this part that I want to highlight, because obviously this is quite the, I don't know, quite the article to say the least. It's what's mentioned here. It says the central bank said 35 banks, guys, 35 banks and credit unions are participating. Well, yes, we got that massive list of the participants and that massive list of like what I pointed out yesterday with, and also the day before that, even with Ripple, right? When it comes to the service providers. And we said that basically, you know, like there was ACI as a provider. There's, for instance, look at Finostra, right? And their Ripple connections, and how we showed you not just, oh, it's Ripple. People said, and this is a great thing to ask, well, forget about RippleNet. Will they be using XRP? And I showed you guys the proof where it shows literally, you know, how it's worded through Finostra, XRP. Now, yesterday, of course, was Stellar. Showed you some things. Even showed you that video in regards to Denell Dixon. So the outline. But with that said, 35 banks and a few credit unions that are participating, right, in implementing it, but not utilizing it is two totally different things. What do you think about this? I mean, are we too far off?
Well,
the utility, right?
You know what it's really saying to me is that they're really putting together the whole infrastructure needed to really use crypto in place of the old system. So you look at BlackRock and Fidelity and all these companies getting ready to custody crypto, to have crypto ETFs. And you look at, you know, JP Morgan Chase, we already know how big of a play that they have with Ethereum, right? And these are the same guys that said that they did not want to do R3 Cordia, right? They didn't want to do R3's Cordia. So what they're putting into place is having the Fednow for the Fed for the US, having JP Morgan and Ethereum there, right? Having R3 Cordia and Ripple there, and having all the infrastructure in place to custody crypto and to possibly have different coins be settlement coins. So really, it bodes really well for us if we are invested in these ISO 2002 coins, because then you know, institutions buy our coins and things look really cool. That reminds me of a piece of information I want to share, by the way. I'll pull it up. I'll get it up and ready. Right before I get into that, I just want to mention something that you sparked in my mind here.
Sure.
Bank of International Settlement wants banks' digital asset exposure limited to 2% by 2025. Now, they wrote this in a really, really tricky manner, but basically what it says is the Bank of International Settlement is going to allow central banks to buy crypto up to 2% globally come January 1st, 2025. So
wow, you know what? This makes sense now. And I actually unexpectedly, guys, have something to back up what Rue's talking about. This wasn't planned, Rue. This wasn't planned.
Hey, man.
This was not planned, but this is beautiful because you know what? I was wondering about some of this stuff. So with what Rue mentioned, it was going to be something I was going to share with you guys, I guess you could say during the quant segment, but we'll talk about it now because it is referenced with Fednow. So let me jump into this for a brief bit, and it's in regards to the actual dollar amounts. Okay, back to what Rue was talking about, right? We know that when it comes to the Bank of International Settlements, they are the central bank of central banks, okay? And what I want to show you guys here is from Yahoo, okay? You're like, Yahoo? Seriously, Max? Just hear me out. They got some good information here, okay? So from Yahoo Finance, and hopefully you guys are able to see us. Let's double check. Yeah, you are. Smash that like, guys. This is some good stuff you were not aware of. So in reference to what Brother Wu was talking about, right? Fednow isn't offered directly to individuals and businesses, but it will serve as the basis of infrastructure for instant payments by linking the banks. Now, just think about that for a moment. Transactions occur between a bank accounts and enable funds to be transferred from, sender's bank account to receiver's bank account immediately. Some of that stuff we already know. But the numbers, okay? Again, back to what Rue was just talking about. The limit per customer credit transaction will be 500,000, but the initial setting of the transaction limit will be 100,000. Now, when I was reading this earlier, I was thinking, why are they doing that? It's like, why are they setting limits? You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, well, is this to protect the actual clients of these banks and so on? You know what I mean? I'm looking at it from that perspective, or I'm looking at all different angles, right? There's a little bit more to this. It says the money can move from consumer to consumer, from consumer to business, or from business to business. Now, we understand a while back that Jerome Powell had this quote of the Federal Reserve built the Fednow service to help make, everyday payments over the coming years faster and more convenient. But here's back to Brother Rue. Over time, like this could be like what Rue was talking about. What did you say, 2025? I believe.
Yep.
All right. So that coincides with what else that we know about, guys? ISO 222, November 2025. Oh my God. I love these guys. They connect the dots all the time. Well, thanks, but we do, okay? That's what we consistently do. So yes, over time, as more banks choose to use this new tool, the benefits to individuals and businesses will include enabling a person to immediately receive a paycheck or a company to instantly access funds, basically when an invoice is paid. And as it gets more into it, it even references Venmo. As you guys know, that's not, it's not a true RTGS, right? Real-time gross settlement type service. But here's the point, right? It's back to what Rue was talking about. And I was wondering about that. So now, to me, if we do connect the dots, which obviously we do, are we too far off here, Rue? I mean, do you think that's a valid theory?
No, I don't think we're too far off at all. And just considering these guys, 2% January 1st, 2025, that's right after the Bitcoin halving. That's, giving that a little time to like kind of marinate, you know what I mean? So imagine now central bank going out, buying Bitcoin and holding it. That will legitimize it, Bitcoin and Ethereum to so many kind of like old guard investors. Oh man. So that's all getting put into place right now with Fednow being able to do what it's doing, with BlackRock and Fidelity getting their ETFs going. So like come 2025, when central banks buy the crypto, everything's in place. Like banks can already custody crypto. You can already send instant payments via Fednow. Like the whole new system is kind of just online and ready to go.
To me, all this makes sense. I mean, full implementation, even the United States, because if we are talking about Fednow, I mean, yeah, we are. I mean, today's the big day, and that's a US-based thing. And the United States will not, like I always said before, they're going to show up to the big show, as in ISO 222, the last to show up to this big party, November 2025. So it's like, yeah, this is a perfect case of, I hate to say kind of like buy the rumor, sell the news, but it's like, utility isn't being used yet. Giving banks the option to, hey, there's this amount of banks and this thing went live. Okay, it went live. Guess what, guys? Remember when the World Wide Web was brand new? If you're old enough to remember this, okay. There's times even before that, there was just news groups and stuff like that. I don't even know if you're old school, remember that stuff, but then we went from that to the adoption of like, what I like to call like Web 1, the early dial-up days and so on. We all lived through it. Well, for the most part, there's some of the youngins here, and that's fine. In some ways, thank God he didn't have to live through 56K modem, or in my case, a 28.8K modem. My God, I was jealous everybody had a 56K because they could download at 5.6K, and I'm downloading at 2.8K. For some of you guys are like, are you kidding me, man? I was complaining to, if you're one of the youngins, I was complaining to my parents that I'm only getting 1 megabyte a second. I would have killed for 1 megabyte a second back in 1998. Okay? I'm just going to throw that out there. But my point is this, all right? That implementation period and so on. So nothing, I should say nothing. There might be a few banks that might have like some contracts where, like we're talking about the invoicing. Right. The retail person can't just go and say, hey, I want this. I want the service. We already found that that's not the case here. What is the case is basically speaking that these banks have these options and it's implemented and so on. It's live. But just back to that example of like, Web 1 back in the early 90s. Okay, it's there. You know what I mean? It's up to you to use it. That's the way I kind of look at it. Like, am I too far off base here with that analogy?
No, not at all. Like, and this will be like America's thing with the Fednow. Like, if it's already connected into Stellar, especially, Stellar's already connected into things like Hedera, into places like IBM, and then you kind of match that with Quant and R3's Cordia. Oh man, then everything's pretty much connected right there, right? And we're going to look at some of those coins today, and you can kind of see that there is some movement with a lot of those connectors, with a lot of those ISO 2002 guys. There's some movement there, okay?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how some of this pans out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kick it back into this outline. And before we get into what Rue Black has for you, I'm just going to give you guys just a tad bit more of what we have. If you're wondering about what I was talking about earlier, you didn't catch the last two shows. Here is in reference to what we're talking about. And it's a video that was uploaded 14 hours ago. It says Stellar XLM, how Stellar USDC is basically like the plug to Fednow, right? It's not being fully utilized, but we have some connections, Temenos and so on, right? The day before that, we talked about Fednow, not Ripple, right? People were saying, will it use actually XRP? We talked about, yes, Finastra is their plug. And we also talked about, what was the other one? ACI, I believe it is, and so on. We gave you guys some evidence. You can check out those videos. They're uploaded. So it's, cool stuff there. And also, just one more thing I want to share before we kick over to Brother Rue and his research. I want to show you guys this as well. And it's funny because Axios came out with an official update, a message based off of the news of Fednow. And if you're wondering what the heck is Axios, well, we did talk about Axios. This is a project that has been funded, I believe, over $95,000 from the Stellar Community Fund. Here is their statement. It says, basically speaking, this right here, and that is, by the numbers, 35 banks have signed up as early adopters of Fednow, including JP Morgan, Chase, and Wells Fargo, but notably not including Citigroup or Bank of America. Is that a jab towards Ripple? I don't know. But it says that number is rather lower than the Fed led us to believe as recently as, June. The U.S. Treasury is also signed up as an early adopter of Fednow. I pointed that out yesterday. I feel as though, like I mentioned, when it comes to the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury, like Forrest Gump and Jenny, they go together like peas and carrots. Some 353 banks and credit unions have signed up for RTP. In order to use either service, both the sending and the receiving bank need to be signed up for the system. And here's their take. And why would they go out of their way to mention this? The bottom line is this. It is still likely to be years, back to what Rue and I were just talking about. It's still likely to be years before most people use instant payments on a daily basis, as they do in countries, for instance, the UK, India, and Brazil. But key thing here is the UK. And what was also in reference to what we were talking about earlier, especially with what Rue Black was talking about, the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks. Worth noting, the government isn't forcing banks to sign up for either of the two systems, but like it says, for the time being, there still isn't a strong business case for banks to do so. Now, why would Axios go out of their way to mention some of this? Well, let me show you the reference, just in case you missed it. And a lot of people do, because on our channel, sometimes we have things that stand out, and there's other things that people just don't understand why we do videos about this. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, I have this video, and I shared it with you guys probably like on a WrestleMania segment, and it's on the top left, as you can see right here, and it states in the thumbnail, is Axios basically Stellar's answer to Ripple's ODL. I think they are. And to see them with what they just quoted today, again, guys, think about it for a moment. Why would they go out of their way to mention some of these key things? All right, going to kick it over to Brother Rue with some of his research. What do you have for us? XLM, what do you got?
Okay, let me bring it up here.
All right.
Yes. So
Okay.
everybody knows about what happened here with XRP. The whole case ended and boom, right? But what people might not be aware of is right behind that also we had XLM, and XLM has continued kind of after that initial pullback, and part of this might have to do with the whole Fednow thing. Now, people know that these two tend to move in tandem, right? So what's kind of peculiar is that XDC is also moving. So it was sitting at about 330, like 3.3 cents, all the way up to 4.1 cents. And other things like HBAR also started moving, as well as Next Era. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but they're both, all of those are ISO 20022 coins other than Next Era. But Next Era is one that says it's a connector of TradFi and DeFi. And if I just pull up Next Era and who they are, if we just go like to their website, if we will. So Next Era is Alliance Block. They used to be, there was like
ALBT.
ALBT.
We cover, we cover Next Era all the time. Actually, it's one that's consistently tagged here. So,
okay, perfect. So you guys should know, like, if we go down here, you'll see like all the different TradFi connectors that this guy includes. Quant, they're all loading. They changed their site up a little bit.
They always do. They always update that thing.
So Quant, BNB, Hedera's in here somewhere. I like this a little bit before when they were just all in one place. Now you got to kind of wait for them. But so it seems to me maybe these guys may all be connected with Fednow as opposed to being competition for Fednow. I don't know. What do you think about that, Max?
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's just again, kind of like back to your. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta turn that off. Back to what you were saying earlier in regards to BIS, Bank of International Settlements, and so on. It's just, they're the central bank of central banks, if you will, and you want to talk about control. I mean, this is where people do have some issues about that control when it comes to Mr. Augustine. But with Augustine, it's like he doesn't have a lot to say. I mean, and if he says basically, look, here's the reasons why we got to do this, I think it's because they want to give extra time for whatever reason for this can not only just get implemented, but that adoption, instead of just having, I guess you could say, price shock adoption. That's what we want as far as retail. But you got to keep in mind from an institutional point of view, I guess that might be a problem. Am I trying to justify it? No, of course I'm not. But I'm glad that you're showing some of this stuff because, I mean, on that chart, and we've seen this before, guys, when it comes to ISO 222, March 20th, everybody was like, yeah, man, it's going to be Ripple, XRP, Stellar. Didn't happen. The one that shined during that time was XDC. XDC is the one that had a big pump. Now you're starting to see it happening again, according to what you just showed us, Rue.
Let me pull up R3 Cordia because a lot of people may not be aware of who those guys are. I'm sure your guys probably do know who they are, but I'm going to.
Oh yeah, the whole R3 Corda bridge is probably the most massive thing that nobody, well, not should say nobody, but we talk about that a lot. It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, guys, and it's like they have all the biggest banking clearinghouses like on their side. Okay, and this is a private blockchain, but the only way we can kind of basically get access to this is by investing in XDC, which is the settlement coin for this, by the way. So one of the people that we're going to notice here is Wells Fargo, SBI, which I believe is connected to, they're connected to Ripple, and I think they're also connected to Citigroup. And weren't these ones that were mentioned by Axios as not being a part of what was going on?
They were mentioning about, what was it? Let me pull that up again. Who was it? They're talking about JP Morgan. Hold on a second. Let me get the exact quote. It says, from Axios, so far 35 banks have signed up as early adopters of Fednow, true, including JP Morgan, Chase, and Wells Fargo. But what they note is, but notably not including Citigroup or Bank of America, that number is rather low than the Fed led us to believe as recently as, June.
Right. And note that JP Morgan decided they did not want to be a part of R3 Cordia. They were a part of them initially, and you can look that up. They were part of them initially, and then they decided to break off and go
with Quorum.
Their own route.
With what?
With their own route, and that was with Ethereum.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about the whole thing with Quorum, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. No, that is it, Max. That is it. They gave Quorum to Ethereum. They basically gave it to them. Let me see if I can find that article. So JP Morgan basically gifted Quorum to, or I'm sorry, yes, JP Morgan basically gifted Quorum to Ethereum. And they're basically the guys who kind of are the money men behind Consensus.
This also fuels that debate that people mentioned in the past of, like what Wall Street's doing in the background, and Gensler's a puppet and all this stuff. I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like that definitely fuels that whole debate. Yeah.
Consensus has acquired the enterprise Ethereum platform Quorum from JP Morgan. They say they acquired it, but really they kind of just gave it to them. And there's places, if you do like further research, you can see that they kind of just gifted Quorum to them, and that they also JP Morgan owns some key Ethereum technology. So basically, they're like the money man behind Ethereum, even though Jamie Dimon quote says crypto is a pet rock. They're secretly the guys behind Ethereum. It's crazy.
No, I believe it. I referenced this a few times where their CEO has said numerous times that kind of like the stance Warren Buffett has. He doesn't believe in crypto and so on, but it's like, okay, did you not get the memo from your assistant or whoever that person is? Like, you guys are more invested in crypto than like you're probably like second or third to BlackRock or something. Like, what are you talking about? Man, like literally Arnold from Different Strokes. What you talking about, Willis? Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. So it makes sense that JP Morgan will be more in league with the Fed now, because JP Morgan's like the biggest bank in America. So naturally they're in league with Fednow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, that's what I wanted to show. It's going to be something to map over the next couple of days to see if it continues with these ISO 20022 coins, as far as like what's going on with Fednow, and if these guys continue to rise in price.